Dear friends joining me today, welcome to this space of reflection and insight. Today, we're diving into a topic you may have heard whispered about or seen mentioned on social media: the supposed protection that black pepper offers against enemies, linked to the name of Saint Cyprian. Have you ever wondered why so many people believe in placing black pepper in specific spots around their home? Why is it claimed that this simple spice can ward off those who wish us harm? And who exactly is Saint Cyprian, this figure associated with protection and the banishment of negative energies? Today, we'll explore a fascinating subject that intertwines popular traditions, ancient beliefs, and humanity's quest for spiritual protection. Because let's be honest, we all feel the need to safeguard ourselves at times, to find a shield against those people or situations we perceive as threats. What's intriguing about this belief is how something as ordinary as black pepper, found in nearly every kitchen, has acquired almost mystical powers in the popular imagination. Sprinkle black pepper in the corners of your home, and your enemies will flee. Scatter black pepper at the threshold, and no one with ill intentions can enter. Sound familiar? I invite you to join me on this journey, where we'll not only investigate the origin of this belief, but also what lies behind our need for protection, and, most importantly, where we can find genuine security that transcends talismans and superstitions. Get ready to uncover truths that might surprise you, and reflect on what truly protects us in this world filled with uncertainties. Before we delve into black pepper and Saint Cyprian, we need to understand what spiritual protection really means. When we talk about protection, we're not just talking about avoiding physical harm, but rather that invisible shield that safeguards our inner peace, our emotional well-being, and our connection to the divine. Get ready to uncover truths that might surprise you, and reflect on what truly protects us in this world filled with uncertainties. Since time immemorial, humans have sought ways to protect themselves from what they perceive as threats, whether visible or invisible. Across all cultures, we find symbols, rituals, and objects that promise safety. From ancient amulets to modern practices like placing pepper in strategic locations around the house. But here arises a fundamental question: does power truly reside in the physical object or something deeper? Imagine a warrior's shield. What really protects the warrior? Is it the shield itself, or the skill, faith, and determination of the one wielding it? Psalm 91, one of the most powerful texts on spiritual protection, tells us, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." Notice it doesn't mention amulets, herbs, or pepper. It speaks of a relationship, a dwelling, a trust. It's as if we have two paths to seek protection: one external, based on objects, rituals, and practices, and another internal, rooted in faith, trust, and spiritual connection. The first relies on elements that can be lost, depleted, or fail. The second is unbreakable because it resides deep within our being. Think of it this way: if you place your security in black pepper, what happens when it runs out? Or when you're in a place where you can't bring it? Anxiety returns because you've placed your peace in something external and temporary. In contrast, true spiritual protection is like an inexhaustible source flowing from within. It doesn't depend on what you have, but on who you are and whom you trust. It's like having an inner spring that never runs dry, while protection through objects is akin to relying on a bottle of water that will eventually be empty. Saint Cyprian is a fascinating figure whose real story has often been overshadowed by legends and magical attributions. According to historical records, there were several saints by this name, but the most well-known, generally associated with these powers, was Cyprian of Antioch, not to be confused with Saint Cyprian of Carthage, who was an important bishop and theologian. Cyprian of Antioch, according to tradition, lived in the 3rd century, and his story is truly extraordinary. Before converting to Christianity, he was a powerful magician and sorcerer. He mastered the occult arts and had pacts with dark entities. It's said he was so skilled in magic that he could control elements, summon spirits, and perform enchantments of all kinds. Legend has it that the turning point in his life came when he was hired to use his powers against a young Christian woman named Justina. Despite all his attempts and spells, Cyprian could not affect Justina due to the protection granted by her faith. This deeply impacted him, leading him to question the real power of his magical arts in the face of Christian faith's strength. Impressed and transformed, Cyprian renounced magic, burned his books of sorcery, and converted to Christianity. He later became a bishop and, alongside Justina, faced martyrdom during the persecutions against Christians under Emperor Diocletian. What makes Saint Cyprian particularly interesting is how his figure has evolved in popular culture. From being an example of conversion and renunciation of magical practices, he ironically became the supposed author of books on magic and spells. The famous Book of Saint Cyprian, or Cyprianilo, which contains spells, invocations, and magical remedies, is mistakenly attributed to him. This transformation of his image reflects how historical figures are often reinterpreted according to popular needs. What was once a testament to abandoning magic for faith paradoxically became a symbol of magical practices and superstitions, including the use of elements like black pepper for protection. Let's speak candidly about this widespread belief that black pepper can fend off enemies or protect against negative energies. This practice, which many carry out with conviction, is part of what we call sympathetic magic, where a symbolic connection is established between the object, the pepper, and the desired effect, banishing the negative. The belief has roots in various folklore traditions. In some cultures, the spicy and strong nature of pepper is associated with the ability to burn or repel ill intentions. In others, its black color relates to the absorption of dark energies. In even more, it's simply attributed magical properties due to its historical value as a prized spice. It's vital to understand that these beliefs do not form part of formal spiritual teachings or established religious doctrines. They are manifestations of popular wisdom, often blending elements from different traditions with personal experiences and psychological needs. I'm not here to judge those who place pepper in their homes seeking protection. I completely understand the comfort that a ritual, symbol, or object we attribute protective power can provide. We all seek security in a world that sometimes seems hostile and dangerous. However, it's crucial to ask ourselves, is it really the pepper that protects us? Or is it perhaps the intention, the faith, and the conscious attention we put into performing that act? If we look deeper, we can see that many of these practices function as spiritual placebos, not because pepper inherently possesses the power to repel enemies, but because the act of placing it with intention gives us a sense of control and security in situations where we feel vulnerable. This understanding doesn't invalidate the practice, but invites us to look beyond the physical object to find the true source of protection. Now, let's delve into what we might call a deeper understanding of spiritual protection. Beyond amulets and external practices, there exists a form of protection that arises from within, from our connection to the divine. The fundamental difference between superstition and genuine faith is where we place our trust. Superstition leads us to depend on objects, specific rituals, or rigid formulas. Genuine faith, on the other hand, connects us to an inexhaustible source of protection that remains with us at all times and places. In the letter to the Ephesians, chapter 6, we find a powerful metaphor for true spiritual protection. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. This armor isn't made of physical objects, but of virtues and spiritual qualities: truth, righteousness, peace, faith, salvation, spirit. Note that this protection doesn't depend on what we have, but on who we are and whom we trust. It's not about placing something in a specific location, but about incorporating certain values and attitudes into our daily lives. True protection functions like an energetic field that arises from within us. When we live connected to the divine, we develop sharper intuition, discernment to avoid harmful situations, and an inner peace that makes us less vulnerable to the negative intentions of others. Think of it this way. When someone has inner peace and mental clarity, it's much harder for them to be manipulated, deceived, or affected by outside negativity. The best protection against enemies isn't something that physically keeps them away, but an inner strength that makes us invulnerable to their influence. This doesn't mean we'll be free from problems or that no one will try to harm us. It means we will have the strength, wisdom, and serenity to face those situations without losing our peace and center. Divine protection is like an inner beacon that illuminates our path, revealing dangers and guiding us to safety. It doesn't need to be recharged, can't be stolen, and never runs out because its source is infinite. And the most beautiful part is that this protection is available to everyone, regardless of our past, our circumstances, or our mistakes. It only requires our openness, trust, and willingness to connect with something greater than ourselves. Behind our search for protection against enemies or negative influences lies a powerful engine: fear. Understanding the psychology of fear is essential to grasp why we resort to practices like placing black pepper in our homes. Fear is a primal emotion that has helped us survive as a species. It alerts us to dangers and prepares us to face or flee from them. However, when fear becomes chronic or disproportionate, we desperately seek ways to control and alleviate it. Interestingly, what we often fear most are not real external threats, but our own insecurities projected outward. We fear rejection because we feel inadequate. We fear failure because we doubt our abilities. We fear betrayal because we don't fully trust our own worth. When we feel vulnerable internally, it's natural to seek external protection. Amulets, rituals, and superstitious practices provide us with an illusion of control in a world that often seems chaotic and unpredictable. Placing black pepper becomes a symbolic act that tells us, "I've done something to protect myself. I can now feel safe." This need for control is understandable and profoundly human. We all have moments of vulnerability when we yearn for certainties in a world filled with unknowns. Superstitions especially flourish in times of uncertainty or when we face situations that are beyond our control. Historically, they have increased during epidemics, wars, economic crises, or periods of rapid social change. The important thing is to recognize that this search for external security reflects a legitimate inner need. We shouldn't judge ourselves for feeling fear or for seeking ways to alleviate it. However, we can question whether the methods we choose truly help us grow and strengthen or simply offer temporary relief while fear continues to grow within us. True transformation begins when we dare to face our fears head-on, understand their roots, and work on strengthening our inner center instead of relying solely on external protections. In the face of fear and the feeling of threat, there exists a powerful antidote: hope. Not a naive hope that ignores real dangers, but a grounded hope that enables us to confront difficulties with serenity and confidence. In the letter to the Romans, chapter 8, we find an extraordinary passage about this unshakable trust. What shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. This perspective offers us a radically different type of protection than what we seek in amulets or rituals. It's not a protection that promises to prevent every problem or adversity, but one that assures us that no external circumstance, no matter how difficult, can destroy what is essential within us. While the protection from amulets like black pepper is based on keeping negativity at bay, genuine spiritual protection is founded on the certainty that even when negativity approaches, there exists an inner strength that remains intact. It's like the difference between building ever taller walls in hopes that nothing can breach them, or developing such a solid inner fortress that even if the walls fall, we remain standing. This hope isn't passive. It manifests in concrete actions, in how we respond to adversity, in how we treat those who have hurt us, and in our ability to maintain inner peace even in difficult circumstances. True protection doesn't mean we never experience adverse situations. It means having the certainty that no adversity has the final word over our lives. It's not the absence of storms, but the presence of a firm anchor that keeps us secure even amidst turbulent waters. This is the hope that transforms fear into trust and uncertainty into serenity. Now let's compare two ways of seeking protection: through objects like black pepper and through prayer and spiritual connection. Protective objects offer something tangible, visible, that we can touch and verify. There's immediacy in the act of placing pepper in the corners of the house. You do it and you feel like you've taken steps against the negative. This tangibility is comforting to our minds, which crave physical certainties. Prayer, on the other hand, operates on a different level. It doesn't produce an immediate physical effect that we can see or touch, but instead works to transform our internal perspective, our attitude, and our connection to the divine. When we pray for protection, we're not manipulating the external world to keep negativity at bay. We're strengthening ourselves internally to face any situation with wisdom, serenity, and strength. A simple prayer for protection could be, "May the light of divine love envelop and guide me. May wisdom illuminate my path to recognize what is beneficial and what is not. May peace fill my heart so that no fear can inhabit it." The fundamental difference between protection through objects and protection through prayer is its duration and depth. Objects offer a temporary sense of security that depends on their physical presence. Prayer cultivates a lasting peace that remains with us regardless of external circumstances. It's like comparing a painkiller that temporarily alleviates pain to a change in habits that addresses the root cause of pain and produces long-term healing. This doesn't mean we should completely dismiss traditional practices or symbols that comfort us. It means we can elevate them to a deeper level, understanding them as external reminders of an inner truth, not as the very source of our protection. Prayer connects us to an inexhaustible source of peace, wisdom, and strength. It reminds us that we are not alone in our struggle against negativity and that there exists a greater power than any threat we might face. This connection is what truly protects us, guides us, and gives us the serenity to navigate even the most turbulent waters of life. Let me share the story of Elena, a woman I met a few years ago. Her experience perfectly illustrates the journey from dependence on external protections to discovering inner strength. Elena lived tormented by fear. She felt that her neighbors envied her, that her coworkers conspired against her, and that negative forces constantly lurked around her home. Her house had become a fortress of superstitions, black pepper in every corner, amulets hanging on doors and windows, complex rituals she performed every morning and night. Despite all these measures, her fear grew. If she forgot any ritual, she spent the whole day in anguish. If someone moved one of her protective objects, she panicked. Her life had been reduced to constant vigilance over invisible threats. The turning point came when a flood severely damaged her house. She lost many of her amulets and protective objects. During the weeks she spent at her sister's house without her usual rituals, she expected terrible misfortunes to occur. But surprisingly, those weeks were more peaceful than she had experienced in years. This contradiction made her question her entire belief system. If she truly depended on those objects for her safety, how was it possible that she felt more at peace without them? She then began a process of deep reflection. With help, she started to examine the origins of her fears. She discovered that many of them were rooted in experiences of rejection and betrayal from her childhood. The enemies she perceived everywhere were projections of her own unhealed wounds. Gradually, Elena replaced her superstitious rituals with practices of spiritual connection, meditation, prayer, gratitude. She learned to observe her fears without identifying with them. She began to build more authentic relationships based on openness and trust rather than suspicion and distrust. When she returned to her rebuilt home, she decided not to fill it with amulets again. Instead, she transformed it into a space of peace and openness. It's not that she never felt fear again, but now she had tools to manage it from within, without relying on external protections. Today, Elena describes her transformation as a waking up. I went from feeling constantly besieged to feeling internally protected. Not because the world is less dangerous, but because I am stronger. The journey from fear to trust is perhaps one of the most significant we can undertake in our spiritual lives. This transition doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that requires patience, persistence, and, above all, courage. Fear contracts us. It makes us small, locks us into ever-narrowing spaces of possibility. It drives us to build walls, to distrust, to see enemies where there may only be people as vulnerable and human as ourselves. Trust, on the other hand, expands us. It allows us to breathe deeply, move freely, and explore possibilities that fear would have prevented us from considering. It invites us to build bridges instead of walls. This transformational process can be visualized as the change of seasons, from winter to summer, from the ice that contracts to the warmth that expands, from darkness to light. When we live from fear, we depend on amulets, rituals, and external protections. It's as if we constantly need armor to feel secure. That armor may provide temporary protection, but it also weighs us down, limits us, isolates us. By cultivating inner trust, we discover that our true protection isn't in what surrounds us, but in who we are. We don't need external armor because we develop an inner strength that accompanies us wherever we go. It's like the difference between a house with alarms, bars, and security systems, but cold and lonely inside, and a warm, welcoming home where safety emanates from the trustworthy and loving relationships that inhabit it. The transition from fear to trust is also a movement from fragmentation to integration. In a state of fear, we feel separated, isolated, vulnerable. In a state of trust, we recognize our connection to everything around us and to the source of life that sustains us. This path of transformation invites us to let go of external crutches, to discover that we always had the capability to walk on our own. Now let's delve into what constitutes authentic spiritual protection, one that transcends amulets and superstitions to connect us with an inexhaustible source of security and peace. Psalm 23 offers us a beautiful image of this protection. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Notice that this protection doesn't eliminate the dark valleys of our lives, but assures us of a constant presence that accompanies us even in the most challenging times. True spiritual protection has several distinct characteristics. It's internal, not external. It doesn't depend on objects or places, but on a connection we carry with us wherever we go. It's continuous, not intermittent. It doesn't need to be renewed, recharged, or replaced. It's available at all times. It's universal, not exclusive. It doesn't require secret knowledge or esoteric practices. It's accessible to anyone who sincerely seeks it. It empowers rather than creates dependency. It empowers us to face difficulties with our own internal resources, instead of making us reliant on external elements. To connect with this source of protection, we can cultivate practices such as mindful meditation, which helps us distinguish between real and imaginary threats and to respond from clarity rather than fear. Contemplative prayer, which connects us with a loving presence greater than our fears. Cultivating virtues like love, compassion, and forgiveness, which transform our relationship with those we perceive as enemies. Gratitude, which shifts our focus from what we fear losing to what we already have. This spiritual protection doesn't promise us a life free from problems or adversities. It offers something much more valuable: the ability to face any situation with serenity, wisdom, and strength. It's not a shield that prevents arrows from reaching us, but an inner light that guides us even through the darkest darkness. One of the most powerful practices for transforming fear into peace is cultivating gratitude. It may sound simple, even naive, but gratitude has a profound effect on our perception of the world and our ability to face adverse situations. When we live in a constant state of fear, our brain is programmed to detect threats. Like a hypervigilant radar, it continuously scans the environment for potential dangers. This hypervigilance is exhausting and distorts our perception, causing us to see hostility even where it doesn't exist. Gratitude interrupts this cycle. When we consciously direct our attention to what is good, beautiful, and beneficial in our lives, we reconfigure our perceptual system. Instead of a threat radar, we develop a blessing receptor. A simple gratitude practice could be: each night before sleeping, identify 3 moments or aspects of the day for which we feel grateful. They can be small things: a beautiful sunrise, a kind smile, a problem solved, a delicious meal. By doing this regularly, we begin to notice our focus changing. We start to see more opportunities than threats, more allies than enemies, more reasons for hope than for fear. Gratitude also has a powerful effect on our relationships. When we recognize and appreciate the good in others, we create a field of positivity that naturally repels negativity. Not because we're using some magical power, but because genuine appreciation changes the dynamics of our interactions. A grateful person is naturally less vulnerable to manipulation, deceit, or negative influence. Why? Because gratitude connects us with our intrinsic worth and with the abundance that already exists in our lives. From that place of fullness, we are less likely to be drawn in by empty promises or to fear imaginary losses. Gratitude isn't just a pleasant feeling, it's a protective practice that transforms our perception of the world and strengthens our resilience against any adversity. Our home is a reflection of our inner world. When we live dominated by fear, our house becomes a fortress, a place where we retreat from the world perceived as hostile. We fill this space with amulets, rituals, and protective objects like black pepper, trying to keep invisible threats at bay. But there exists another possibility: transforming our home into a true sanctuary of peace. Not a refuge that isolates us from the world, but a sacred space that nourishes us so we can face it with serenity and strength. This transformation begins within us. As fear gives way to trust, our physical space naturally reflects that change. We no longer need to fill every corner with protections because true security emanates from within. A sanctuary of peace is characterized by simplicity, beauty, and openness. It's a space where we can breathe deeply, where we feel nourished and renewed. To transform your home into a sanctuary, clean and organize the physical space. External clutter often reflects and amplifies our internal confusion. Create a small corner dedicated to tranquility and reflection. It can be as simple as a comfy chair by a window or a modest altar with elements that inspire peace. Introduce natural elements: plants, stones, wood, water. Nature reminds us of renewal cycles and the inherent beauty of life. Reduce noise and distractions. Sensory overload fuels anxiety. Silence nourishes peace. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that reflects our own inner journey. As we release the fears that chain us, our physical space also frees itself, becoming a reflection of the peace we are cultivating internally. Popular beliefs like the use of black pepper for protection are part of our cultural heritage. They represent the accumulated wisdom of generations who sought to make sense of the world and protect themselves from its dangers. Therefore, it's not about completely rejecting them, but relating to them from a deeper understanding. When we encounter traditions like placing black pepper in the corners of the house, we can adopt different stances. Blind acceptance, following the practice without questioning simply because that's how it's always been done. Outright rejection, dismissing the tradition as outdated superstition, denying any value it might hold. Conscious integration, recognizing the symbolism and intention behind the practice, honoring the tradition but not depending on it for our fundamental security. This third path allows us to maintain a connection with our cultural roots while evolving in our spiritual understanding. For instance, if you grew up in a family that used black pepper for protection, you could. Investigate the origin of this tradition and appreciate its historical and cultural significance. Recognize that the true power isn't in the pepper itself, but in the intention of protection and the connection with ancestral wisdom. Transform the practice into a conscious ritual. Rather than placing pepper mechanically, you could do it as a symbolic act, accompanied by a prayer or intention that expresses your true source of security. If you prefer not to use pepper, you could create an alternative ritual to bless your home. Light a candle and walk through each room, visualizing light and peace filling the space. Use water with a few drops of essential oil to sprinkle the corners while expressing an intention for harmony and protection. Simply sit in silence in each space of your home, breathing consciously and feeling gratitude for the shelter it provides you. The important thing is that any practice you choose is an expression of your awareness, not a substitute for it. That it connects you with your inner wisdom and a deeper source of protection rather than fostering dependency and fear. At the heart of all authentic spiritual life lies freedom. Not a freedom to do anything without consequences, but the inner freedom to consciously choose how we want to relate to the world, to the divine, and to our own fears. This freedom is especially crucial when we talk about protective practices. Many people live chained by superstitious rituals that, far from protecting them, keep them in a constant state of anxiety. They fear that if they don't perform a certain action, something terrible will happen. True spiritual freedom allows us to evaluate any practice and ask ourselves, is this bringing me closer to greater inner peace? Is it helping me develop trust and strength? Or is it keeping me in a cycle of fear and dependency? I know a family that for generations had followed numerous superstitions related to home protection. Every house was filled with amulets, strategically placed herbs, and complex rituals that had to be performed on specific days. Failing to adhere to these practices generated terror and expectations of imminent misfortunes. One day, after a deep conversation about the origins of these fears, they decided to conduct an experiment. They would simplify their approach, maintaining only those practices that held genuine meaning for them, and perform them from gratitude and connection, not from fear. At first, it was difficult. When something negative occurred, the temptation to revert to their old superstitions was strong. But over time, they discovered a freedom they had never known. They no longer lived under the weight of countless rules and prohibitions. Their home became a space of peace, not because it was protected by magical objects, but because they had found an inner security that transcended any amulet. This liberation doesn't mean abandoning all traditions or symbols. It means relating to them from freedom and awareness, not from fear and compulsion. It means recognizing that we are the ones who give power to symbols, not the other way around. Sincere prayer has a transformative power that goes far beyond the words spoken. It's not a magic formula to manipulate reality, but a bridge that connects us with a deeper dimension of ourselves and with the source of all life. When we pray authentically, we're not just asking for external circumstances to change. We're opening ourselves to be transformed internally, to see reality from a broader perspective, to access wisdom that transcends our usual thinking. Prayer has the power to transform physical spaces, not because it magically alters the molecules in the air, but because it transforms the consciousness of the person praying. And when our consciousness changes, everything in our environment seems to change along with it. A space where prayer is regularly offered takes on a different quality. It's something that can't be measured with instruments, but it's something many have experienced, a feeling of peace, openness, and presence felt upon entering that place. This transformation doesn't require elaborate prayers or deep theological knowledge. A simple and sincere prayer can be more powerful than 100 mechanical recitations of memorized formulas. Here are some simple ways to use prayer as a transformative practice. Gratitude prayer. Thank you for this home that shelters me, for the life that flows within me, for the visible and invisible blessings that surround me. Protection prayer. May this space be a sanctuary of peace. May all who enter feel love and acceptance. May the light of truth dispel all darkness. Discernment prayer. Grant me wisdom to distinguish the true from the false, the essential from the superficial, what nourishes from what harms. Surrender prayer. I surrender my fears and worries. I trust that there is a wisdom greater than mine guiding my life. When we transform our relationship with fear through prayer, we no longer need amulets like black pepper. Not because prayer is a super amulet more powerful, but because true prayer connects us with a security that no external object can provide. Prayer reminds us that even in moments of greatest vulnerability, we are not alone. There is a presence, a force, a wisdom that accompanies us always if we have open hearts to perceive it. A deep understanding of spiritual protection reveals that it's not something intermittent or conditional, but a constant presence that accompanies us always, even if we're not always aware of it. In Isaiah 41:10, we find a beautiful expression of this truth. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. This passage speaks of a protection that does not depend on our merits or actions, does not fluctuate according to external circumstances, does not need to be renewed or recharged, is both protective, I am with you, and strengthening, I will strengthen you. To maintain awareness of this protection in our daily lives, we can start each day with a moment of inner connection, remembering that we do not face challenges alone. Create visual reminders that connect us with this truth. It could be an image, a word, or a symbol that resonates personally with us. Practice mindfulness, which helps us be present and aware instead of getting lost in worries about the future or regrets about the past. Cultivate community, surrounding ourselves with people who nurture our trust and inner strength instead of feeding our fears. Recall moments in our lives when we have experienced protection or guidance, especially in difficult circumstances. The beauty of this vision is that it doesn't make us dependent on external objects like black pepper, which we might forget to place or that might not be available at certain times. It connects us with a protection that is always present, always accessible, always sufficient for any situation we face. This understanding frees us from the constant fear of being unprotected and allows us to live with a quiet confidence that doesn't deny life's challenges, but knows there are inner and spiritual resources to confront them. We've traveled together a path that has taken us from popular beliefs about St. Cyprian and black pepper to a deeper understanding of true spiritual protection. It's time to integrate all we have explored. The security we seek doesn't come from physical objects like pepper, nor from specific rituals, nor even from perfect prayer formulas. It arises from genuine faith that is neither blind nor rigid, but alive and transformative. This genuine faith is characterized by trust. Not that everything will turn out exactly as we wish, but that there is a purpose and a greater meaning behind our immediate circumstances. Openness to receive guidance, wisdom, and strength from a source that transcends our limited thinking. Discernment, the ability to distinguish between the fear that paralyzes us and the intuition that protects us, between the superstition that enslaves us and the faith that frees us. When we live from this faith, our security becomes unshakable. Not because we are exempt from difficulties, but because we develop the capacity to face them from a place of inner strength. The enemies that once terrified us lose their power over us, not because they have vanished, but because we no longer perceive them as threats to our essence. Even those who genuinely wish us harm lose their capacity to deeply disturb us. It's as if we move through life with an invisible shield, not made of rigid defenses, but of a resilient flexibility that allows us to absorb blows without breaking. This inner security reflects in how we inhabit our spaces, in how we relate to others, in how we respond to challenges. We no longer need to fortify ourselves against the world. We can open ourselves to it with discernment and trust. St. Cyprian, whose name has been linked to so many magical practices, offers us in reality a much more powerful teaching. The true miracle isn't in spells or amulets, but in the inner transformation that leads us from fear to faith, from distrust to openness, from superstition to spiritual freedom. Dear friends, we have reached the end of our journey together, a journey that has taken us from popular beliefs about black pepper and St. Cyprian to the depths of true spiritual protection. Let me conclude with this brief prayer. May the light of divine love illuminate every corner of your being and your home. May wisdom guide your steps along paths of peace and discernment. May inner strength support you in times of trial. And may gratitude open your heart to the infinite blessings that surround you. You will not walk alone. You will not face darkness without a guiding light. In the divine presence, you find everything you need: protection, peace, and purpose. If this message has resonated in your heart, I invite you to share in the comments. What genuine protective practice will you implement in your life? Your experience may illuminate the path for others who, like you, seek security in an uncertain world. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to receive more reflections that nourish your spiritual journey. Your presence and participation are invaluable to this community that grows with every open heart to the truth. Always remember, true protection isn't in what you have, but in who you are and whom you trust. Live from that center, and you will walk with peace amidst any storm. Until our next meeting.